Send effects can be shared among multiple different channels, and a good example of how to effectively use a send effect is going to be on a drum set or any sort of track or group of tracks that share the same acoustic environment. So the types of send effects that you'll typically be using are things like reverb and delay and chorus, those types of effects. So on this particular drum group, I'm going to solo the folder, and if we go to the full mix console, which I'll get to by typing F3, then I'll find all of the different individual outputs for my drum instruments. So I've got the kit right here, which is essentially everything except for the kick channel, the snare channel, the hi-hats, and the toms. So the kit is going to have things like cymbals and cowbell, those sorts of things, whereas all of the other instruments have been routed through their own channels so that I can process them separately. And I'm going to add one effects channel to all of those different individual channels. So I'll click the first channel, then shift click the last channel, then right or control click on any of those channels, and I'm going to choose effects or add effects channel to selected channels. And then I'm going to get a dialog box, and it's going to ask me what sort of effect I want to use. So I'm going to go to the reverb section right here. I'm going to call up Revelation, which is a really nice sounding reverb. Its configuration is going to be stereo, and then the outputs are going to go to the stereo output. I'm going to create this folder outside of the group. I'm going to call this Drum Reverb. And then I'm going to click Add Track. And what you'll see is a couple of things happen in the background. The first thing that happens is it reveals the control panel for that particular effect. I'm going to close that for right now because I want you to see it got added to the mix console, and you'll notice that its fader knob is purple. That helps you see where the effects channels are. And you'll notice that the name of the track appears at the bottom of the window. Sometimes the effects groups will get added right before the group output channels, and it depends on how you add them in that dialog box. But this particular effect channel, since it's going to be drum oriented, has been placed right in the same area as the drum channels. But now how do we get signal from these channels into the effects channel? That's where the sends come in. So I'm going to scroll up here until I see the send effects. Actually, I'm going to close the racks right here until I get to the sends rack and click on that to open it. And you'll see that every single channel that I added that FX channel to by selecting it before I created that effects channel has now been assigned here and been given a level of 0 dB. But that's problematic because now all of these individual channels are going to be getting the same level of reverb. Let's take a listen to them. See? That sounds terrible. What I want to do is adjust the amount of level from each of those output channels. So the kick drum is a prime example of something that I wouldn't want to add any reverb to. So I can either power it off. So now the bass drum is not getting any of that reverb. If you wanted to add a little bit of that, you could change the level. Let's put just a tiny bit of reverb on the bass drum. But the snare drum is going to get quite a bit. The hi-hats don't need a lot. They just need a little smidgen. The tom-toms, though, I'll want to have quite a bit of reverb on. And then on the kit, or all of the other instrumentation in the drums, I'll want to have a little bit. So I'll adjust that down, but not as high as some of the other tracks. Now I start to get something that sounds more like a processed drum set. But the overall level is just a little too high. And that's what the effects channel is actually for, is to adjust the output level of the effect, or the send effect that's going into the mix console. So to adjust the overall level, you can bring the level of the effects channel down until you get a proper effect level. Now, I like the level, but I want to craft the reverb a little bit differently. So I'll need to edit the reverb. Well, how do I get the control panel back? Well, you'll notice that the effect that I added actually became an insert on the FX channel. And I know that seems a little weird because I told you that level-based effects are where you'd put inserts. But effects channels are a little bit different. The effect actually gets put as an insert on that channel. So to reveal the control panel, you can click the E on the insert. Another way to get to it is to go to the effects channel itself, hit the edit button there, but then to reveal the effect that's assigned to it, you would go to the insert slots right here and click that E. That will reveal the control panel. And I like this reverb, it's just that it's a little bit overpowering. I don't want quite as much time, so I want to actually make the room smaller. So I'm going to change the room size. And I'm going to cut the main time of the reverb down. That'll make it a shorter reverb. And another thing I want to mention is that Send Effects will have a mix control for the amount of dry signal versus the amount of wet signal. However, when you're using a time-based effect on a send, you will always need the mix control to be set to the 100% wet without any dry signal coming back through. The mix control is really for those occasions where you put a time-based effect on an insert. So now we can listen to the before and after of our drums with and without reverb. So I'll mute the reverb. And we get that dry sound of just a dry drum set sitting in a studio. If I wanted to hear it processed, I'll unmute that effects channel. And if I listen to the tom-toms, they'll be coming up here in a moment. The tom-toms have as much reverb as the snare drum, so they're going to have quite an impact when you hear it in that acoustic environment. That's nice. And so that's how to add send effects to channels. Next, I'll show you the strip effects.